We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Is that going to
They are images that shocked the world and that no Kenyan wants to see again. Men hacked to death. Women and children burnt alive as they sought refuge in a church. The disputed presidential vote of 2007 erupted into an ethnic conflict that left more than 1,200 dead and 600,000 displaced. A coalition government in 2008 put a lid on the tensions, but now there are worrying signs of what might come in the upcoming elections. Hundreds have been killed in Tana River Delta, where political rivalries have inflamed conflicts over resources. And the upcoming trial of two leading candidates could further complicate the election and its outcome. Uhuru Kenyatta and his running mate William Ruto are due to stand trial for crimes against humanity at the International Criminal Court in The Hague in April, just a month after the vote, for allegedly stoking the violence last time around. The ICC accuses Kenyatta, currently the Deputy Prime Minister, of directing youth from his Kikuyu ethnic community to fight Raila Odinga's supporters in 2007. Charges he's always denied. Will an electoral victory give him a chance to escape international justice? Uhuru Kenyatta talks to Al Jazeera. Uhuru Kenyatta, thank you very much for talking to Al Jazeera.
It's a pleasure. Welcome to Kenya.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Why should Kenyans vote for you on March 4th? What is it about you that would make a great leader for this country?
We have put together over a period of time a coalition whose key objective are two major points. One, the need to ensure that we have peace and stability in our country, and the recognition that for that to happen, we need to have a united nation. We need to bring the Kenyan communities together. What we've seen since the advent of multi-party politics in this country is the fact that politics have in many ways been localized, been ethnicized, and this is partially one of the reasons that every election year we tend to find ourselves in problems.
What do you respond, Uhuru Kenyatta, to some of your critics who say that you haven't earned your place in Kenyan politics, like your rival Raila Odinga, that you're in the position that you're in today because you're the son of Jomo Kenyatta, the founding president, that basically you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth? What do you say to them?
That is indeed a fact. I am who I am. I can't deny who I am. But with regards to earning my position in Kenyan politics, I think a lot of people tend to forget that I've been in this political situation for quite a while. I actually entered active politics in 1992, right? I vied for the first time and actually didn't make it in 1995. I've grown up the ranks of my former political party, KANU, basically starting at the grassroots of my own in our own local area. I garnered
there is a
support
sense that
in
your
various
background,
parts
because of
the
who
country.
you are, basically determines why you're here now.
Well, you know, one would look at Raila Odinga is his, you say he's earned his place, but he was also equally
He was jailed.
the son
He was, I know, I'll get to that in a minute, but he was jailed. He went through very tough times, which you didn't necessarily.
Being jailed is not necessarily a qualification to earning leadership positions.
All right, let's talk about how you would handle the issues that confront Kenya. Both you and your running mate, William Ruto, are facing trial at the International Criminal Court in The Hague in April, just a few weeks after the first round. And you've both said that you would continue to appear before the court even if you were elected.
Absolutely.
How are you going to defend yourself against such serious charges while at the same time running the affairs of a country of more than 40 million like Kenya?
The first thing you've got to recognize is the fact that Kenya, as a signatory to the ICC, we ourselves as citizens of this republic have first and foremost acknowledged that we have to follow due process, right? And we have voluntarily accepted to answer to those charges, right? Because all they are is accusations that have been leveled against us. We have not chosen, first and foremost, to run away. And I think that's the first thing that we need to...
What I guess I want to get to is it feasible, is it practical to
let
be...
me get to you. Let me get to you.
All right.
That first and foremost, we have accepted to follow due process. Due process states, right, that you are actually innocent.
Until
right?
proven guilty.
Until proven guilty.
I'm talking about the
Second,
practicality here of defending yourself while also being in the office of president.
We are a democracy. Kenya is a democracy. There is no statement anywhere, even by the ICC itself, that says that we are not eligible, right, to stand for office, right, as we move on.
It's not about the question of eligibility.
I'm getting to you.
Okay, answer my question.
Let me get to you. So therefore, right, even as we continue to face these charges, right, we will still continue to appear. The affairs of government, right?
But there could be a power vacuum as soon as you're inaugurated, if you have to go back and forth to The Hague.
You know, those
hearings last month, Uhuru Kenyatta. How are you going to do it?
Absolutely no power vacuum, because one thing that people always tend to forget... If the president
and vice president are at The Hague and not in the country.
One thing people tend to forget is that Kenya is not a banana republic, right? Kenya is a country that actually has very firm and clear institutions in place that will allow, right? And
for you
never forget
to shuttle
that we
between
also,
Nairobi and The Hague constantly?
We also, right, are not facing similar charges.
Right.
We are never there at the same time, if at all. Okay. All right? So consequently, the system and the state, right, will continue, right, to run, right, irregardless of whether the court, the two are not interlinked. Right?
There are a lot of people who are raising questions over this.
If you will recall,
right.
If you will recall, right, even as we have gone through the charges currently, yeah, I was still the Minister of Finance of the Republic of Kenya. Nothing.
Right, but being the Minister of Finance and being President is two different things, isn't it?
Being a Minister of Finance, my dear, right, in any country, right, is a critical and key position.
All right.
Right?
Let's move on, because we could talk about this. We could argue about this for hours and hours. Again, you are charged relating to the post-election violence of 2008. You are innocent, of course, until proven otherwise.
Absolutely.
If Kenyans vote for you, if they vote you in, will that vindicate you? Will that mean you're innocent?
I'm not going to say that it'll mean I'm innocent, but it will show, right, as we have consistently stated, right, that the charges and how they have been brought about, the Kenyans themselves put to question, right, the charges that have been leveled against us.
So if Kenyans vote for you, will that then mean that international justice doesn't have a purpose anymore?
Clearly, I'm not saying that international justice does not have a purpose, but clearly it will mean that the process and how we have landed ourselves as being accused before an international court is definitely going to be raised to question, because that court is supposed to be representative of
raised to questions, but you would still cooperate with the court.
Of the overall Kenyan interest, right? Now, if Kenyans do vote for us, it will mean that Kenyans themselves have questioned, right, how and the process that has landed us at the International Criminal Court.
What matters most to you?
But that does not mean that we will cease to cooperate, because, as I have said, most importantly, we understand and recognize the rule of law.
Right.
And we will continue to cooperate so long as we are signatories to the Rome Statute.
So what matters most to you, that you are elected or that justice relating to the post-election violence is served?
Both. We want to see justice done, but equally, we have offered ourselves as candidates, notwithstanding, the charges leveled against us.
But justice still hasn't been done. The victims haven't been honoured. Justice hasn't been served. The government seems to have been playing for time in trying to find answers.
Allow me. I said justice needs to be served.
Why has it taken so long for justice to be served?
I think you need to... we have presented ourselves. We have gone through the process. We are still willing to go through the process. I think that question is better answered.
The Kenyan government that you're a part of has been playing for time.
The Kenyan government has not been playing for time. And even if you were to look at the situation and what the Kenyan government has done over the last 5 years, first and foremost to ensure that all the displaced have found settlement, have been rebuilt to compensate loss of property.
The current prosecutor says Kenya has not cooperated fully because it hasn't allowed access to some of the witnesses, for instance, in some of the areas.
Has done more to see the establishment of reconciliation in this country, to see the fact that those who were victims, right, have been resettled on its own accord and without
I'm talking about finding the culprits,
assistance.
about finding those responsible. The ICC says the Kenyan government hasn't fully cooperated because it's not allowing access to witnesses in some of the areas where there was violence.
You know, you're asking me a question that you shouldn't be asking if you recognize what I'm saying, right? Because I have presented myself as an accused before that court.
Okay.
All right? I have fully cooperated with that court. I don't think you have heard that court say that Uhuru Kenyatta as an accused person...
But I'm talking about the Kenyan government, which you are part of, Uhuru Kenyatta.
The Kenyan government, of which I am a part of, has a committee, of which I am not a member, that has been dealing with that situation, that is headed by a minister of government, and I think that accordingly should be the appropriate person that you address.
Should an individual facing the charges of the gravity that you are orchestrating the violence of 2008, that's what you're accused of, should such an individual be trying to lead a country like Kenya? It's a lot of baggage.
Let me tell you something. Kenya, as I have said, is a country that has established firm, clear, democratic roots and principles. The question I should be asking you is that we are not forcing ourselves onto the Kenyan people. We are offering ourselves for election, democratic elections.
There are those who believe that your candidacy is a threat to the people of Kenya.
Those same Kenyans, my dear, those same Kenyans, right, know fully well the charges that we are faced with. They will make a democratic choice, which is their free will.
There are those who believe...
They will make their democratic choice,
indeed,
which
Kenyans,
is their free will.
But take this into account. You have some Western powers, like the United States, hinting at possible sanctions against Kenya if any of the ICC suspects were to be elected.
If you want to impose sanctions on a country because it has followed through and elected its leaders through a democratic process, that puts to question, right, what the interest of those countries is with regard to Kenya, right?
But there is the risk, once again.
Those interests can definitely not be the interest of safeguarding, right?
But
the democratic will which they themselves claim to, claim to defend. So consequently,
there is a risk that Kenya could become a failed state. What is more important?
Kenya will not become a failed state. Kenya, as you know, has over the last 10 years experienced incredible growth, a growth that has not been led by Western aid, but a growth that has been led and driven through Kenyan initiative and Kenyan resources.
We'll get to the economy because I do want to...
And that will continue.
Okay,
so long as Kenyans have been given the opportunity to exercise their sovereign right, and that sovereign right belongs to the people of Kenya and does not belong to any Western nation whatsoever.
Okay, let's talk about your alliance with William Ruto. Many see it as an alliance of convenience, perhaps as a way to avoid the ICC. You've denied that, of course. but it's also viewed as an alliance that brings together two of Kenya's biggest community, the ethnicity cards, basically. So what is this about? I mean, does tribe rather than political ideology matter the most to you?
Let me start off by saying, again, one never looks back at history, one looks just only at
But Kenya
what
is a
going
country that's
on.
always voted along tribal lines.
One doesn't look, like I'm saying, at history. Right? They only look at the current scenario. We need to recognize that our respective parties hold more than our two communities. We have supporters throughout the country, as my political party, which is TNA. William Ruto's URP has supporters throughout the country who all acknowledge and accept that the principles on which our coalition is founded is the necessary principle to take Kenya to the next level of development. So consequently, what is happening, people may want to assume is an alliance of two big communities. But the fact that myself and William Ruto come from two big communities, well, look at it this way.
It helps, doesn't it?
The Accord Alliance comes putting together Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka, who also come from two big communities. So consequently, right, it is not where you come from that matters. What matters
is it not
is
really?
the philosophy that is driving the agenda of your respective coalition.
You may believe that, Uhuru Kenyatta, you may believe that.
Not may, I do.
You do,
Yes.
but you can't deny that tribe, ethnicity, has always been a key factor in Kenya's history, in Kenyan democracy.
Absolutely. Can we go back to my introductory statement when you asked me what our objectives are? And our objectives is in recognizing that we understand that for Kenya to get to the next level of development, we have to bring all these communities together.
It's a big challenge, isn't it?
We have to involve all these communities so that together we can address the myriad of issues that continue to confront this country.
I want to talk about 2008, the violence of 2008. There is a great deal of fear right now that all the ingredients that led to what we saw in 2008 are present in Kenya right now. We've seen a rise in the inter-ethnic tensions. We've seen violence in Tana River Delta, hundreds killed since August. Why has the Kenyan government failed to address this issue?
The areas that we are experiencing current violence, we are now talking about the areas around Tana River. One again has to look at the historical background behind that.
Right.
And this is an area where you have different communities that have constantly been feuding over scarce resources.
Right, over land, over water.
Over land,
but having
over water
politicians
rights,
to some extent,
over land, over water rights,
right,
over grazing rights, etc.
having the politicians, local politicians, to some extent, contributed in fueling. So if you're elected, will you hold politicians accountable?
Not only hold politicians accountable, but work with the same politicians, work with the same communities to ensure that resources and development get to them so that the issues that occasion and cause conflict are dealt with. So rather than deal with the symptoms, we start dealing with the issues that cause and start curing the problem.
Who do you see as responsible for the violence in 2008?
Let us put it this way. The violence, at the end of the day, never forget, I was not a candidate for presidency. William Ruto was not a candidate for presidency. If today, as you are asking me, what will you do? I think one of the principal people you should ask who is responsible for the violence is Raila Odinga, who is my current opponent, who was a candidate in 2007, right?
But Raila Odinga...
When I was a candidate in 2002, right?
You say I should ask Raila Odinga.
And the international community should recognize this and remember this.
Right.
When I was a candidate in 2002, Kenya did not experience, right?
So
did not experience the violence that we saw in 2007.
Okay.
So consequently,
So
right? you who wants to assume leadership, you who wants to give this country direction, you who is leading a team, right? Ultimately, that is where responsibility
but
accounts and matters.
But Raila
so consequently,
Odinga,
that question should be addressed by the two individuals who were seeking the presidency in 2000.
Then let me ask you this. Raila Odinga isn't facing trial at the ICC. Should he? Should he have been on the Ocampo list?
The question that I was asked by Mr. Ocampo when we were at the pre-trial, was whether Raila Odinga should face criminal charges at the ICC. I said, I am not an investigator. But what I do know is that Raila Odinga has political responsibility for the chaos that occurred in 2007. I stand by that position.
Well, the ICC says that you executed a plan formulated before the 2007 election in which the Mungiki sect, one of the key militias involved in some of the worst violence that we saw, attacked perceived allies of your rivals, the ODM in the Rift Valley. The ICC says it has incriminating evidence against you. The prosecution says you spent over 3 billion shillings, $34 million, to fund the mobilization and transportation of the Mungikis.
Well, absolutely. Like I said, they have accused me, haven't they? Right? They need to prove that. And I know.
How do you plan on defending yourself when you go there?
Well, I am defending myself currently. I mean, we all have
before
our
the judges,
legal teams and we
You're
will defend
confident?
ourselves. Absolutely. Beyond any reasonable doubt. Right? Beyond any reasonable doubt. Highly confident, knowing fully well what happened and knowing fully well also how the process of getting some of us to that particular position happened. All right? But all these things will unfold in good time.
Okay. Let's talk about another sensitive issue, corruption. There is skepticism and cynicism about Kenyan politicians from the Kenyan public. Kenyan MPs are some of the best paid in the world, and they're even trying to get more bonuses, I understand, when the average Kenyan earns just a little over $2 a day. You are ranked as one of the richest men in Africa, on the African continent. What message does that send? You know, and when you are in power, how will you change this image that Kenyans have of their politicians as being filthy rich?
So the issue is not about wealth creation. What the issue is to ensure, and that is really where we need to be able to focus ourselves, that wealth creation is not actually limited to a few. All right? And that's actually part of what our new constitution is all about.
Shouldn't Kenyan politicians then lead by example?
It's on record that I said that we cannot, right, first and foremost, afford, and secondly, neither is it morally correct to be awarding yourself salaries when we still have so many others in government who need that increment much more, and we're not setting the right example.
The Kenyan economy is growing, but perhaps not at the 7% that the World Bank thinks it should be growing. How do you persuade investors, foreign investors, that Kenya, under your leadership, if you're elected, won't face more instability? How do you attract them back into the country?
If we just build, like I said, on tackling the social challenges that Kenya faces, and not tackling those social challenges through imprisoning people and etc., but by creating and expanding opportunities for Kenyans, right? So that the average Kenyan themselves begin to feel that they themselves are part and parcel of this great economic growth. That is what ultimately will create stability in this country. That stability is what, therefore, if Kenyans are willing and prepared to invest in their own country, so too will foreign investors say, in that country where those people, they themselves are investing in their own economy, they themselves have confidence in their own economy. That ultimately is the key that attracts people to a nation.
Uhuru Kenyatta, thank you very much for talking to Al Jazeera. Thanks
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.